let's open the debate. We don't have too much time because we only have a few minutes, but do you have any questions? Wait for the microphones. Minister of Culture again. I have a private question, a question to a gentleman from Canada. How do you perceive the extension of the Canadian Vatican, the Chinese Vatican agreement, based on what you said?
It's very controversial. I was discussing this earlier. I think among Chinese Catholics, the agreement is not well regarded. You know, within China, the Chinese government early on established the Catholic Patriotic Association, which demanded that the Catholics should break their ties with the Vatican and not be subordinate to the authority of His Holiness the Pope. The result was that most of the Catholic Church remained underground, and the growth of the Catholic Church in China has been considerably less than that of the Protestant Church. So, I mean, one can understand the desire of the Vatican to somehow render the Catholic underground church more accepted by the Chinese Communist Party. That being said, you know, there has been a long history of Chinese Communist Party appointed bishops being acknowledged by the Vatican as genuine apostolic succession bishops. But this separation of the Catholic Patriotic Association from the Roman Church has been tragic for Catholics. Some underground Catholics, for example, would go for pilgrimage sites that had been under the control of the Chinese Communist Party and would feel unable to enter them because their concern is that they are under the, well, the way they put it, under the control of the devil. So I don't, you know, since the agreement came up in 2018 and it's been extended, Chinese authorities have violated the terms that they pledged to the Vatican, and the Vatican has had difficulty in addressing it. I frankly believe that it was a mistake, and I think a lot of the Chinese Catholics, including those in Hong Kong, such as Bishop Zen, also feel that it's very difficult to try and come up with some religious accommodation with a government that has a policy of promulgation of atheism and opposes all religious belief among its people.
Thank you, David Smoljak. A question to Josef Holý. It is related to the note of Daniel Raus and the T-shirt with Václav Havel, that truth and love will win after all. Are we not experiencing an opposite trend? Society shows that truth doesn't matter. If you look at the result of the presidential election in the US, that everyone is entitled to their own opinion, that there is a reduction of relevance of institutions. So is it not that truth doesn't matter, that only our opinions, our conviction matters? Do you think this is true? Well, that's what I feel as well, and that's why I'm wearing this T-shirt. We say that we live in a post-truth society, and the definition says that facts do not matter so much as emotions and personal appeals and opinions. And during my lectures, I always say that this is bullshit, sorry for the word. And we never can accept it and should not accept it, because if we accept this, we will go back several centuries. Democracy is about looking for a consensus, and if we want to find it, we need to look at facts. If we use this term, the post-truth era, some people say, okay, yes, we live in the post-truth world, but if we accept this, then we will never be able to live in a democratic society. So it is true. And it's also related to the structure of the information space. If we distribute content and prioritize content to billions of people, and if it's distributed by AI, and this is a conference about religious freedom, and religion is about certain values. These are the basic values. And AI doesn't have any values. When they started training the neural network, they didn't say, okay, these are the 10 commandments, the major sins. No. They didn't do it. So they trained AI based on what will keep people in front of the screen. And these are the principles based on which we distribute the information to billions of people. And this is in contradiction with tolerance, be it the tolerance of religions or tolerance of anything else. So yes, that's true. And that's why we are creating the podcast together with Sasha. These techno-oligarchs have paid many millions to the American president, and they will work on savings in the government. So this is an issue, and we have been noticing this for many years. We have seen the algorithms in social media, but we haven't been able to stop it, and I'm sorry for this. Well, we will see. Other questions? Petr Hula, good afternoon. I was interested also in the presentation of Mr. Holý. You spoke about TikTok. And our National Cybersecurity Office said that TikTok was a threat. So what do you think, Mr. Holý, about our politicians who are very active on TikTok? It's not only Mrs. Schillerová, but also Prime Minister Petr Fiala, under whose auspices this conference is being held. He's also active on TikTok. So what do you think about this? Thank you. There are two levels. You are right that already 2 years ago the National Cybersecurity Office issued a warning, and it should be binding on state institutions and critical infrastructure. So the TikTok should not be on any smartphones used in these institutions. That's true. There are many aspects of why TikTok is a threat. But we should look at it from the perspective of Western social media. Facebook, Twitter, Google, so YouTube, Meta, Instagram, and so on, all these Western social media cause these types of issues. And here we speak only about the persecution of believers. But there is another issue of how it influences, for example, children, how it causes violent propaganda, and so on. If you collect all of these issues, then you could imagine how it can be used in China. In the 21st century, this is the century of information, and we survived the 20th century thanks to mutual deterrence. There were two blocs who were aiming their weapons at each other. So if there is the ultimate threat of the nuclear weapon, which it certainly is, because Putin also said that who has the best AI will win the race, then we are the weaker party, because mutual deterrence is no longer here. And our Western companies do not operate on the Chinese market because they would be subject to censorship or because they would be completely forbidden on the Chinese market. So we let the Chinese operate their platform, which collects profiles, manipulates the public discourse. We don't know because it's a private company and it's operated by totalitarian China. And in fact, it's said that it's a private company, but there are no private companies in China. So we let them operate this platform, but they do not let us operate our platform. So they can manipulate with our societies, but we cannot manipulate their societies. That's an issue. And our politicians also travel to China. Well, yes. The question is that the opposition likes the Chinese regime, and if the opposition uses TikTok, then we have no other option than starting to use it as well. That's how I see it. Okay? Any other questions? Marcela wanted to add something.
Thank you very much. I wanted also to ask something to Mr. Holý, because I mean the discussion this year in freedom of religion has been everywhere about artificial intelligence. There have been dozens of conferences of freedom of religion and artificial intelligence. And for this situation, then they look at pogroms and other lynching mobs that get organized through social media. And in our recent international high-level conference in Berlin, it was almost the consensus that it was better. The people, the users, are too stupid, basically. They will never learn how to distinguish between misinformation and reality. So it was better to, and less expensive and quicker, to just fine heavily the social platforms so that they stop, well, that they rather begin cutting out information that somebody disliked. What do you think about that? Of course, there was a lot of opposition about those who say, and who's going to decide what we like and what we don't?
This is a very complicated issue in our Western society. This can be appeals to violence or disinformation, and we always get stuck at the border, what the border is and who should have the responsibility. When it comes to my violent mobs, lynches and massive violence, I showed you the scale of hate speech. Because you can quantify this, you can measure this. And what we should ask from these platforms is that they measure it and that they stop it. Because if the online communities incite to violence, if they dehumanize, if their enemies are past, rats, illnesses, poison of society, that's what Goebbels used to say, if they appeal to violence, then they need to be stamped on. They should be stopped. You can really measure this statistically, and if you see that the violent speech increases, then it's the responsibility of the platforms to stop it. It's their moral responsibility. They took over the responsibility to distribute content and information to the people. And we know that this is just one step before the outbreak of violence or genocide. So in this particular case, when it's violence, and here in the Czech Republic we have legislation prohibiting hate speech based on religion, race, and you must not incite anyone to hate. But the problem is that in the online world, the state has not sufficient capacities to persecute anyone. So it should be the responsibility of the platforms, but we are not successful in this. Thank you. One last question. I'm very sorry, but we will have to conclude the Q&A.
aspects that are so fascinating when it comes to social media, AI, and faith. One is the speed with which you can radicalize, and it's been mentioned, but a social media company needs just over 100 data points, just under 100 data points to know us better than our parents know us, and just over 100 data points to know us better than our partners, our husband or wife knows us. But they have hundreds of thousands of data points. So what they know about us is so... We had the case earlier where somebody, because of the nature of their prayer, they paid a £9,000 fine. The social media companies already know the nature of our prayer. In German, we have the saying, die Gedanken sind frei. Thoughts are free, they're no longer free, they're known. So they're known with tremendous precision, and if that information gets used to radicalize, and you don't need all of it, you just need a little bit of it, then the speed of radicalization can be tremendous. Similarly, when you deal with aggressive proselytization, you know who, based on the data, who's interested in faith at all, who's interested in switching their faith, and what the point of approach should be. Now, if you're in a majority faith, then you might think, well, this will lead to lots of people getting saved, but also it will lead to people of your faith switching religions to somebody else. The strong will have access to the data and will know you have a fear of a father figure, so we'll approach you through, you know, the Holy Mother, or you have a fear of authority, so this is liberal. So missionaries don't have to, it's not a shot in the dark. The human element almost goes, you know exactly the triggers that are going to work. So the speed with which we will see our landscapes changing are really almost unthinkable.
Já s tím souhlasím, jenom bych k tomu, jestli můžu krátce.
I agree. I will have just a brief comment. It's not only about changing our religion, but the character of the new information space leads to a cult behavior. And from the perspective of Christianity, we are shifting to pagan civilizations. For example, Elon Musk has 200 million followers, and he has a cult of personality. Before the presidential elections, it was possible to create a QAnon. It's an online sect which has Donald Trump as the fighter of the light, who will clean the world from pedophiles. So that's what they say, and there are many other cults like this one. For example, the cryptocurrencies. That's a cult because you believe in the growth of cryptocurrencies. Everyone believes in this. But at the same time, also you mistrust banks. So you have an external enemy, like every sect. And we can find many similar sects like this one. And in this information space, we will only see a rise of these sects. So we are turning away from the traditional institutions, and we are turning to sects based on emotion.
Že už skutečně musíme vést v této optimistické.
I'm very sorry that we have to end our discussion in this very optimistic atmosphere. It is clear that social media are a public space, and we were able to learn to regulate our public space in the physical space, so hopefully also in the digital space.